Noi siamo qui, we are here, that's the name of our project, laboratory, experiment. Whatever comes, comes. I heard myself saying to Adam a moment ago, whatever happens is like better than nothing. So I'm glad you're all here, and there's more people arriving all the time. And I just want to remind you the title of this workshop is Making Visible Our Collective Values. And in other words, at this point in time, it's a question of making the most of the Biennale. First of all, I want to pass the word to Liza, who we have everything to thank for. It was her idea to have the courage to propose this project to the Biennale.
I came here with a body of work from my practice in London, interested in the way that, I shouldn't stand there because I get double mic'd. It's really a bad idea to stand there. Interested in the way that there's a very fuzzy line between where buildings stop and where urbanism starts, and that buildings exist as architectural artifacts, but they also and containers of power and all sorts of other things, but they also have an incredible impact on their immediate environment. So we're invited to be part of Common Ground, and we were invited to suggest a collaborator. And the collaborator was We Are Here Venice, and our proposal was to bring Venice in. We started with an example of what we meant, and so we proposed to revisit a built project of ours where there'd been an attempt to make present the multiple histories and uses of a small piece of open space in London's East End, historically the site of multiple churches, but now the location of an important shrine, the Shahid Minir monument to the local Bengali community. And so with built stuff, we made room for these different histories, layers of history. And then we spent the budget, which we were kindly given by David Chipperfield, on one afternoon's of meetings, just an afternoon, where we brought together 9, I think, of the local institutions, so that sense that the institutions and what they hold could be part of making public space. And this endeavour carries on from the project in 2010, and that time it was just in the UK pavilion, of making a project for Venice, with Venice, built with Venetians, but it was only on the last day, as for Salutiamo Venezia, an event curated with Jane and others, that the space had meaning. And the point is, it's use which defines meaning. So an event like today was hosted, and during the day, the fact that even one particular element, such as water, has multiple meanings, whether it's discussions around the lagoon or privatization. And the morning after was pure pleasure, because suddenly this little timber husk, the little fragment of a model of London's Olympic Stadium, had its own grain. So we know from experiences in London that anger is very positive.
So I'd now like to introduce you Mireille Rodier, who's here from Detroit via Paris, who has some really amazing parallels to talk to us about, and we're going to find who'd have ever thought we'd have things in common with Detroit. I'm very honored to have you here, Mireille.
Thank you. And here's the first slide. I'm really delighted to be here, and it's amazing how much parallels, actually, I see between the city of Detroit and that of Venice. Even though it may seem like a stretch, I think I may be convincing that there's some similarities here. I'm going to present very briefly a project that I did with Anya Sirota, who's here, and a wonderful team of people very recently in September, and we've been working on it for the past few months. But the project began with the realization that the city of Detroit is subject to an incredible amount of media attention throughout the world, especially international media, especially European media, who are all very obsessed with the downfall of capitalism, reified in the city of Detroit, through images of abandonment, of decay. There's an incredible amount of books that have come out, books such as these that are on sale throughout the world, except in Detroit, that present slides of what's been termed now ruin pornography, basically, that just keeps highlighting and aestheticizing the decay of Detroit. So we were looking at all of this, and we thought the best thing we can do is to actually bring all of these representations and show them to Detroiters and get their feedback, because in a way, the way the city is represented affects what the city is. There's a return, there's a feedback mechanism. And we wanted the Detroiters to understand that they had power over the image making of their own city, and they were disenfranchised from that power. So how to do this? We did it in 5 steps. The first, we looked for a site. It had to be a very public site, and we thought we would use a public park. We didn't want to be in a building where there would be threshold. We wanted this to be as open and accessible to the general public as possible, and a park was the way to do it. We built 3 pavilions. The first one was what we called the library, and we got a collection of about 75 books, and we put them on display. And we built a movie theater, and we showed every single documentary. We had asked the filmmakers for authorization, and they all agreed. Most of them agreed, otherwise we didn't show the film, but we ended up showing some 36 hours straight of films back to back. Third, we built a forum for discussion. And then we invited 32 experts, what we call DJs, the discourse jockeys, and all of these experts were invited based on their level of expertise. Some were Detroiters, some were politicians, some were academics, some were filmmakers, and all of them had a very strong expertise relative to the construction of that image. We went out of our way to try to gather the biggest public possible, which is very difficult in Detroit, where half of the population doesn't necessarily have access to internet or new media, etc. And so we went from door to door to asking communities, to passing flyers and trying to recruit everybody and inviting them, their family, etc. And I think the big question was, at the end of the event, what stays? What can be productive in the city of Detroit itself? And what can be returned to the city, as opposed to all this media attention that never quite lends back or contributes to the city, but just stays out, gets extracted, information that gets extracted from the city. So that was the project.
So now Adam's going to tell us about the interesting Theatrum Mundi project.
So I'm Adam. I'm working on a project called Teatro Mundi, Global Street, at the London School of Economics in London. And Teatro Mundi is a kind of a new urban form. It's just at its very kind of beginning. But what it's trying to do is precisely what I think might happen here later this afternoon, and what was evident from the talks in Detroit and the work that Liza's been doing for quite some time now, is to try to bring together diverse constituents of the city. In our particular project, we're focusing in on people who are self-defined as architects or urbanists, engineers, acousticians, and bringing them together with people from the performing and visual arts, on the other hand. So choreographers, set designers, lighting designers, sculptors, musicians, painters, to try to see whether something meaningful for practice emerges out of these discussions that can reshape the ways we think about cities, the ways we create cities, and the way that we relate to each other in cities. So the point I want to end on is to come back to this notion of an elegy, of a lament and a mourning. It seems to me that the process of mourning, or a serious reflection on the loss of past futures, what a city can no longer deliver, what a city can no longer afford to deliver, is an important part of community debates and organization. Rather than erasure, we might be left with uncomfortable legacies, with messy legacies. Collective mourning, I want to propose, is essential for a politics of compromise. And here I return to the artist. I also want to suggest that this kind of mourning collectively can be and might be brokered by a multidisciplinary set of voices, including artists, who might be able to broker this kind of debate. Working collectively towards any given project or set of policies within a constantly changing environment, like Venice or like the much more ordinary Edmonton, must involve serious reflection and might begin, perhaps, with an elegy. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Now we have Michela Provoost from Crimson Architectural Historians.
I would like to show you a project today that I hope will be relevant for the discussion here in Venice, even if it's in a project in Holland, in an area completely different, almost on all aspects from Venice. It's this area in Rotterdam, a modernist neighborhood, which only has a history from like 60 years, which has a completely different composition, which is, well, I don't have to point out the differences to you. The only similarity that I could think of is that also hopefully it has about the same amount of people living there, like 40, 50,000 people. But of course, no nuisance from tourists here. There's no one who ever goes here on a voluntary basis. The notion that, the reason why I think this could be relevant is because of the notion of collectivity, and I want to talk a little bit more about this. Our office has been involved in the renewal of this area for almost 8-9 years. And we did numerous projects, like 20 or 30 projects with artists, with graphic designers, with architects, with landscape designers, with a number of people. But I just chose 3 of these projects to tell you about the way that we worked with the people who lived there and the notion of collectivity that came from there. The sense of collectivity was from the beginning of this area a very strong element in the design of this city, but it was a different kind of collectivity than we would appreciate nowadays. It was one that the government thought was necessary. It was one designed by architects, and it was completely, it ran parallel with the composition of this area. So as you can see, the notion of collectivity here is shaped by these green spaces, which are like the center of all these houses that are surrounding it. And the idea was, of course, that this would be like a collective unit. So you see that the notion of collectivity is top-down and very much connected to the neighborhood unit. But nowadays, this not really work that way anymore. What we have been looking for is collectivity on a voluntary basis. So people who choose to be part of a collectivity, not because they actually, by coincidence, live in a house and form part of this sort of top-down collectivity. The project was published widely, not only in Holland, but also in all kinds of other, in Germany and in England especially. So it also helps, this architecture and the involvement of professionals also helps to transcend the local with that, which is, especially for a place like that, a very important thing. And well, I hope this can be of some inspiration to the discussion later on.
All I can say is the thanks is all mine. And in London, we've been working for 17 years in contested places, and I have never seen such a huge potential as the individuals who are committed to the future and present of Venice. And if you could all just manage to stay in the room, and to think of the other people who should be in this room. So if each of you made the list of the 5 people who should be sitting on these chairs, I think even within 3 years, you could do the most extraordinary things. And I'd just like to say thank you for all that the last 2.5 years have given me, to Jane, to Mosto, and to Michela, and to all of those other collaborations, because it's been life-changing. And I look forward to seeing the Venice that you collectively create, going for a walk around it. So thank you very much.